It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are all kinds of fired up for the Thursday episode of your source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, with a little look at three Canadian teams. What is going on in Ottawa? The Calgary Flames' wretched start, and are the Vancouver Canucks for real? Plus all the other news from around the NHL that you need. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
Your Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Buckle up, hockey heads, because here we go. Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is jam-packed full of all the top news from around the NHL. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to have to keep these topics tight and short, Steele, because there is a lot to get to. And it's interesting that it's all happening with Canadian clubs.
Yeah.
And not all of it could we have fully expected. The Vancouver Canucks are looking very good. Let's talk about that. Some fantasy pieces need to be discussed. Elias Peterrsson on a heater, the second star of the month. Let's talk about that. Calgary Flames, my goodness me. I was wrong about their comeback bounce back, wasn't I, Steele? That is a bad start, and now contract extension talks on hold. Let's break that down, what it means for their fantasy pieces. A lot of other news to get to and bets, but let's start with this Ottawa Senators news quickly because it doesn't have as much fantasy angle, but it is an intriguing conversation to have. Hit me with your take on this Dorion situation because we liked a lot of the moves that he made over the last couple of seasons, but a deeper look at it, he's made some bad ones as well.
Yeah, he has. And you just brought up that Mika Zibanejad trade, back from 2017 or 2016, the last time they've been in the playoffs. At first glance, I was very shocked to see that Pierre Dorion was fired after this punishment, receiving this punishment from the NHL after the whole Evgeni Dadonov trade to the Vegas Golden Knights. And he had a no trade clause to the Anaheim Ducks, and that wasn't fit into the original trade to Vegas and all of those all of the logistics behind it. I was, again, very shocked to see Pierre Dorion was fired after all the good things that he's done over the last year and a half for the organization. But I watched a little bit of that press conference that the Ottawa Senators organization held at 3:15 Eastern time on Wednesday. And again, it just goes back to this all could have been avoided if the negligence wasn't there, just doing the job properly. This whole entire situation, there wouldn't be these repercussions of losing a first-round draft pick, which is extreme punishment, which Michael Andlauer was getting at towards the entire press conference of how severe it was. And
he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. It's losing a first-round draft pick, whether it's 2024, 25, or 26, whatever one they choose to do. It's going to be a substantial move. Or a substantial loss for the organization of the Senators. So it's something that Andlauer was going back and forth with. They talked about it in the press conference about, again, just negligence that should have been avoided and could have been avoided, but ultimately made the decision that they had to move on.
This is an interesting situation because while I do understand that you didn't see it coming, I think a lot of people did. And some rumblings out of Ottawa, since Andlauer, the new owner, put Steve Staios in place as the team's president of hockey and operations, it's been clear that there's been a vibe that he's going to want to maybe make changes around the rest of the organization and really get his people in there. So some people kind of felt like this was coming, but the Senators went in 8 seasons, 225, 261, and 65, ranking 28th in the NHL over that span in points. And really, the win now mode that he's kind of taken on, it hasn't panned out. After trying to bring in Claude Giroux and DeBrincat, things maybe started to look up once again, but it really hasn't panned out. He brings in Korpisalo this offseason to mixed reviews. They're 4-4 to start the year. There's still a lot of big-time fantasy value in this team. We love Jake Sanderson. Thomas Chabot has dealt with injuries, but when he's playing it on his game, he's elite. Jacob Chychrun, again, when healthy, he's really solid fantasy-wise. So there's definitely still value to be had here. I guess it just doesn't really smell right in Ottawa. Getting a lot of vibes that we got from the Winnipeg Jets in certain ways over the last couple of seasons, that maybe there's some things going on behind the scenes, the Shane Pinto situation being one, this Dadonov situation being another, that we weren't fully aware of. And this has been going on now for a little while. So I'm getting it's not smelling right in Ottawa. 4-4, of course, lots of hockey left to be played still.
Well, that's the other thing about this situation. Is how quickly the punishment was for Shane Pinto and the whole gambling situation, and then how long it took for this to get settled as well. Like, this was over a year investigation and dealing with that behind the scenes. Like, how did they make the judgment to lengthen this for over a year, and then Shane Pinto pretty much 2 weeks and you're done?
And let's be clear, 100%, but also let's be clear, this is the NHL. Botching another situation to hand out proper penalties.
Yeah.
There have been a lot more serious grievances in the NHL over the last couple of years that I think would warrant penalties of a first-round draft pick. Hint, nudge, the Chicago Blackhawks situation that tried to get swept under the rug. The Ottawa Senators are getting slapped over the wrist with a major penalty for something that I understand is not in the rules or is against the rules. You got to let these teams know of these trade lists. But when you look at some of the more egregious moves from some of these other franchises that haven't been suspended or penalized nearly as harshly, this one's a bit of a joke. Anyway, let's move on to the rest of the episode, which is not a laughing matter because there's a lot to talk about, Steele. Where would you like to go? You want to go, well, let's go out west, but you want to go Flames? You want to go Nucks? What do you want to do here?
Let's go to the Calgary Flames and talk about that situation because it is up in flames right now, unintended specifically. The Flames are on a 5-game losing streak, and in those 5 games, they've been outscored 20-6. Right now, the team absolutely has no identity, and I love the fact that Nikita Zadorov is coming out and being the voice in the locker room. But you need more out of this team. You need Nazem Kadri, you need Jonathan Huberdeau, you need Michael Backlund, the new captain, to come out and step up and figure out what's going on. It can't just be on the shoulders of Zadorov. And going back to the no identity, ever since losing Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, they do not know who they are. They don't know what this team is and where they're actually going. And that's why you said as well, and like we've heard, that the contract negotiation specifically between the Flames and Noah Hanafin has been put on hold because of how poor this start to the season has been. And to go to your point about fantasy value for some of these players, I've never seen a player struggle and depend on another player as much as Jonathan Huberdeau does with Alexander Barkov for the Florida Panthers. Like, obviously that in 2021-22, that monster season, 115 points, 85 assists was maybe above what he's capable of doing.
An outlier, perhaps.
An outlier, but even the 3 seasons before that, 61 points in 55 games, 78 and 69, 92 and 82. He was above a point per game player the 3 seasons prior to that. So again, maybe an outlier, but you don't expect a drop-off of 55 points in 79 games. He's got 5 points through 9 so far this season. It's not terrible, but when you have a team who is struggling to score goals offensively right now, you are by far the highest and best player on that team, you need to be doing more. They don't have a single player that is over 7 points on their roster right now. They're struggling to score goals. I don't think the problem is in net. I don't think the problem is necessarily defensively, but you have all of these players who are capable of scoring. Again, Elias Lindholm is very underrated. If he can get some chemistry going with these teammates of his, then he's going to start producing. Huberdeau is a playmaker throughout his entire career. That's the number one thing you get from Huberdeau, and he's not doing anything out there offensively. And again, maybe this goes to show how important a guy like Rasmus Andersson is on the back end of things, because he's been gone the last 4 games because of that suspension. So now that he's back, maybe this can turn the ship a little bit, but you need Nazem Kadri, you need Jonathan Huberdeau, your highest paid players, probably your best 2 players, to start getting this team in the right mindset.
Look, when you look at the scoring overall to start this season, Steele, you've only outscored the Washington Capitals, St. Louis Blues, and San Jose Sharks so far to start the season, it's not going to be pretty. And when it comes down to it in Calgary, clearly it wasn't the coach. This is on the players. A lot of rattling, a lot of chatter came out of Calgary about how it was Daryl Sutter's system, a lack of a focus on the offense. This team's energy feels whack from all the way out east, Steele. Yeah. It doesn't add up. It doesn't feel good. Huberdeau's going through the motions right now. Naz has one goal. He's looking like a shell. This team does have some nice playmakers. I like Elias Lindholm as a playmaker. I love Jonathan Huberdeau as a playmaker. Even Naz, who can facilitate at times, create space with his body and his edge. They don't have any real shooters left. They lost them in Tkachuk and Gaudreau. We thought to fill in Huberdeau. They bring in Weegar. Weegar's been pretty good overall. Fantasy value, obviously. He peaked that 1 year in Florida, and he's disappointed. But overall, he's been pretty good. But this Calgary Flames team is in trouble big time. The fact that they're holding off on contract extension talks with both Lindholm and Hanafin is very indicative of what's going on, because these two guys, if this team's going to turn it around, and they're not a part of it, they need to be moved on now to get some value back in here. You're going to be back in here in a moment when we continue to talk about all the top news from around the NHL, including are the Canucks for real? Charlie McAvoy got suspended, and of course, big-time bets. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. A player on your favorite team could pop 50. Your favorite team could lift the Lord Stanley's mug. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially, of course, daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. The app is super easy to use. You can fill out your entries in under a minute. Steele and I loving that group chat functionality in the app where you can connect with other fans and you can play daily fantasy, NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB, and of course, NHL all on Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all four major sports leagues, including the NCAA. It's your team every single day. And thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe, hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip, and I appreciate all the love and support you show us Monday through Friday. We're going to show some love to the Vancouver Canucks right now, because they are red hot and a complete turnaround from what we saw last season. Obviously, a different looking team defensively. They get a healthy Thatcher Demko, who's looked really solid.
Yes,
I've been talking a lot this episode, so I want your input here, Flip. How are you looking at the Vancouver Canucks and what they could possibly do the rest of this season?
Number one, shout out Rick Tocchet for bringing this club together and really putting together a team that's seemingly playing with newfound purpose. That's number one. Number two, I'm loving, you brought this up a couple of weeks ago or maybe a week ago, that the tandem also of Casey DeSmith and Thatcher Demko have been really solid. And that's giving this team a newfound confidence. There was a lot of goalies in that crease last year, and some of them were not so good. Let me just also, lastly, my last takeaway is Elias Peterrsson. I think you and I had a bit of a conversation the first year we were doing this, and you were a little uncertain. I think it was 2 seasons back about his ability to maybe step out as a superstar. I think he's really doing that now. You were right. It took a little bit longer, but my goodness, is the kid on fire. 13 points to open up the season in October. He was the second star in the NHL along with Jack Hughes and David Pastrnak. Number 2, smash right there in the middle. And let me just show some love to the Vancouver Canucks overall, who, and I have it right here, Steele, are off to their best start, 9-game start since 2005. And only 3 other players in Canucks history have produced this many points through their first 9 games of a season. So give some love to what's going on in Vancouver. Do I think they can maintain those, Steele, is where I turn it over to you. Hit me with your take on this, because I still, when I look at that standings in Vancouver, out west in that Pacific, I still think there's going to be a couple of good teams on the outside looking in, And I just don't know where Vancouver fits in, because at the end, you got to think LA, Vegas for sure.
Yeah.
Edmonton's going to creep up. You got it. Can't help but feel Seattle's going to be better as well. And the Ducks are playing well. I don't know what you think about their ability to do this a long term over this season.
Yeah, a lot of teams that we had in the playoffs, in our preseason predictions have had rough starts this season. Edmonton and Seattle, like you mentioned. Vancouver Canucks have been absolutely great to watch so far in the first month of October. And I love the fact that you were talking about the offense. You were talking about the tandem, because I want to talk about the blue line and how big of a difference it's been so far this season. They are top 2 in goal differential at plus 15 right now. And a big difference are the additions that they've made on the blue line. A complete turnaround from this group we saw last season, adding Carson Soucy, adding Ian Cole, a veteran on the blue line. I love Philip Ronek. That was a massive pickup at the deadline last year. He's got 8 points through 9 games. He's a +8, 18 shots, 13 blocks, 7 hits. He's getting it done all over the ice right now and with the peripheral stats. And now the biggest difference for me that I'm seeing from this team is Quinn Hughes actually has someone he can depend on to back him up if he wants to jump up in the play and join the rush. Also, he can depend on Ronek to start a play and make something happen. It doesn't lie on the shoulders of Quinn Hughes anymore. Secondary and primary assists, he's right there at 1.1 on both of those so far this season. So it's not just the secondary assists. He's actually able to start plays and get the offensive production going in the right direction for Vancouver. And again, this is a player who has never actually played a full 82-game season. And now that he gets to play with elite players like Quinn Hughes, Elias Peterrsson, JT Miller, Andrei Kuzmenko as well, and a few other young guys that they brought into the offense. Anthony Beauvillier, that you've mentioned many, many times, who's been great so far this season.
He's picking it up.
If Philip Ronek can, stay healthy, play a full 82 games, or at least play more than 70, this is a guy whose entire career has been around 30 to 35 points. I could see 45, maybe even 50 points is pushing it a bit. But now that he's surrounded around that talent, I think it's possible.
He's a banger league beauty. The offensive ability and talent of Quinn Hughes has been able to unlock Philip Ronek's full potential, I believe, allowing him to do his thing at both ends of the ice with confidence. He's also anchoring the second power play unit. By the way, that power play unit in Vancouver is the 6th best in the NHL, behind only teams like the Devils, Rangers, Lightning, Red Wings, and Maple Leafs. So they are getting it done on special teams, and a lot of that has to do with the balance that they now have. Steele, last year we would have said this team's very top-heavy, right? Kuzmenko, they can score some goals. They got Besser. They got Pettersson. Now you got the goalies going. You got the blue line going. You got the offense working, and guess what? You're winning games. So there you go. How about, though, if you don't mind, you want to go Backstrom, you want to go McAvoy? What do you want to do here?
Let's go Charlie McAvoy, and then we'll touch on Backstrom and big-time bets, in the last segment of this episode. Charlie McAvoy, again, super quick, just a suspension for 4 games. It's the exact same hit we saw from Rasmus Andersson on Patrick Laine, pretty much. Point of contact was right on the head. And to me, it's just a nonsense play. Absolutely no reason he should be doing that. I don't even know why he was in front of the net at that point. The puck was getting turned up the other way. And Ekman-Larsson didn't even have the puck, and yet he still flies by. He actually lifts his chest and his shoulder to make contact on the chin. And again, just a bonehead play. He's costing himself 4 games this season, and he's costing his team to lose their best defenseman. Obviously, the Bruins can probably handle themselves without him for 4 games because they've been just so good so far. But again, you're out for 4 games because of a play that you just did not have to make.
And perhaps most importantly for our listeners, a guy off to a heater of a start. 2 goals, 6 assists, 17 hits, 20 block shots, and 23 penalty minutes steal, while also throwing, and I always miss this one, but his shots were kind of impressing me too. Where are the shots? Shots. Anyway, I'm missing it right now, of course, because I want to talk about his shots. But, total shots, 41 shots attempted. That's actually pretty good. 20 shots on net. There we go. Anyway, bonehead play, dangerous play as well. Rewatching that, Oliver Ekman-Larsson is lucky to not be out long-term. I don't even know if he's got a concussion or not, but that was a very dangerous play. He's been suspended once before in his career for a hit in the playoffs on Josh Anderson. I think he got a game for that. This is just one of those moves that, hey, the Boston Bruins need Charlie McAvoy. They're off to a great start. They've got a tough stretch of games here. They got the Leafs tonight. So if they now maybe, all of a sudden lose 3 of 4, these are these kinds of things that will make impact. But obviously, you're going to be needing to fill in for McAvoy over the next week and change. That's why you'll tap into Monday's episode for waiver wire specials.
Yes,
we'll have some blue liners that you can fill in, though, right after what we're coming back from the break, though. Let's talk about Backstrom. Let's talk about Thursday's bets, baby.
Big time bets where the money is made. Of course, we'll get to those. But this episode is also brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And finding top talent has never been easier. Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews right there on hand. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Sponsor a job and boom, instant match. Show you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job descriptions immediately after your post. And one of my favorite features is the instant match because it is just so darn good. With instant match, you can start hiring fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Just visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Once again, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with the FanDuel app, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets. That is an absolute steal right there from FanDuel, the best sportsbook app on there, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, which we suggest you should right now, there's no better time to get into the action because the app is so easy and secure to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And of course, we like that same game parlay. We're going to be doing that later on for big time bets episode. I got a flip triple dip there. Hey. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Boom.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe, leave a follow, and a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and feedback we get from all of our listeners out there. Continue leaving the comments on the YouTube channel. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. We are going to get to big time bets very, very soon. But real quick, let's talk about the Washington Capitals. Nicklas Backstrom taking a step back, taking a step away from hockey right now, dealing with those injuries and the surgeries that he's had in the past. And I want you to start with this. How do you feel? Like the Capitals are 4-3-1. They're not off to a terrible start, but when I've seen and watched these games right now for the Capitals, I just don't like what I'm seeing overall.
That's just it, Steele. Look, you and I have been pretty critical on this team. We've been all over this window for winning closing. We know that some of the moves that they brought in, in the offseason, they didn't really do too much to shake up this lineup to really support this aging core. Darcy Kemper, we understand he's a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, but he was behind one of the best squads that we've seen in the last number of years, and he hasn't exactly been a legitimate star number one. So there's not a whole ton to love. John Carlson is still bringing a ton of fantasy value on the blue line. Dylan Strome has been pretty good to start the season. There's a couple of young pieces. Maybe Connor McMichael's starting to figure it out a little bit. But overall, I'm with you. I think what I have to say about this is shout out to Backstrom, one of the game's premier playmaking pieces for the last number of years. And since entering the league in 2007, Steele, there are only 2 players with more assists than Backstrom, Sidney Crosby and Patrick Kane. So this guy is a Hall of Famer. He's a Stanley Cup champion. He's arguably the second best player in Washington Capitals history. But I think it's time for him to step away. Yeah. He has been extremely banged up, and I respect what he has done. And I think a lot of it, for real, Steele, has to do with his brotherly love and connection with number 8. These two guys are brothers on and off the ice. They've also formed some unreal chemistry. There was a comment you made to me last year or a year before about Zuccarello being able to find Kaprizov in the parking lot with his eyes closed. That's the kind of chemistry that I feel Backstrom and Ovi have. They could have blindfolds on and they'll find each other. So I think this will actually end up hurting Ovi in his chase for those goals over the next season or two. But Backstrom's been pretty banged up. So I would say it's time for him to move on, and it's definitely time to move on from him if you're a fantasy GM, although you likely have already, including that's what I did last season.
It's always tough to come back from those surgeries. What was it? Back surgery or hip surgery?
He had hip resurfacing surgery, Steele. And there's only been a few players in the NHL who have undergone it and tried to come back. Ed Jovanovski, Ryan Kessler, and Patty Kane. None of them have been able or were able or have been able to do that. So there you go.
Yeah, it's just a tough surgery to come back from. And it always lingers there even when you're on the ice and even off the ice when you're even just trying to relax. But with this situation, I think losing Backstrom, it's going to be catastrophic for team morale. Just another thing that is not going to go the Capitals' way. And this, honestly, this seems like the Calgary Flames and the Washington Capitals are sort of in the same boat right now. They don't really know quite who they are right now and where they're going to go. Like you said, they haven't really done the right things for this aging group in Washington. You know, like you said, Dylan Strom's been playing really good, but they've got one goal scorer who just has a monkey on his back right now, and one playmaker in John Carlson, who's also coming back from a pretty serious injury from last season.
True.
And right now, the goals for against goals against has just been brutal for the Capitals. So we'll leave it at that. We'll have to wait and see how it goes with the Washington Capitals without Nicklas Backstrom. But let's see how it goes for big time bets on Thursday night. If you don't mind, I'd like to start us off because I've got the big flip triple dip right now from one game.
And let's not forget your first winning side bet. Props to you. You're on a heater.
Bang.
Hey, a 6-inch sub coming your way at the end of the season. But I like your idea. We'll keep a running tally of side bets and who's up what by the end of the year. And I'm hoping I'm not having to take out a next loan to pay you off, but we'll see how it goes.
Starting off, that's a good win for me because it was getting close there in the third period. I was getting a little nervous. I was about to send you a quick message, but the under hit for me, so I'll take it. 1-0 start on the side bets, but flip triple dip here for a big time bet Thursday night. I'm going to that Canucks Sharks game, and I'm telling you right now, go place the same game parlay because it looks and it seems like free money right now. Canucks on the puck line versus the San Jose Sharks plus 118. Canucks Sharks over 6.5 plus 104. The Canucks have won the last 9 games in a row against the Sharks. 6 of those games were by 2 or more goals, and 7 of those were over the number. So you're telling me that they've won 9 games in a row and over 50% of the time the puck line hits and the over hits at plus 118 and plus 104. Those are the first 2 picks. Last pick of the night, Elias Peterrsson over 1.5 points in this matchup. He's been on absolute fire. He's on a heater, coming off that hat trick the other night and going up against the worst team in the NHL. I think he's going to produce offensively. So those are my 3 picks. My lock of the night is going to be Peterrsson over 1.5 points.
Steele, first and foremost, my lock of the night, Sharks on the puck line. And just to back up what you're saying, actually,
you're taking Sharks on the puck line?
Sorry. Vancouver, my bad. Canucks on the puck line. Sorry. No, because they've actually won 9 straight against San Jose.
Yeah.
And 5 of those games in San Jose, where they are, the last 5 in a row, have all gone over the number. In fact, 8 of the last 9 overall have gone over the number between these two teams, and I'm loving this angle. You bring up the fact that the Canucks have dominated the Sharks. The Sharks are just straight up doo-doo baby. They are bad. This is one of the worst teams that I've seen in a long, long time, Steele, and I am going to continue to fade them hard. So lock of the night's out of the bag early, but there you go. I was loving those angles, and thank you for bringing them up so very nicely. Second bet. 2 overs here, 2 totals bets here. 1 over, 1 under. LA Kings at Ottawa. There's not a ton here in the recency bias that is going to back me up on the over, other than when you look at these games in terms of head-to-head. But when you look at these teams overall individually, both of them involved in a ton of games going over the number, and I mean well over the number. And this is just a gut feeling. The LA Kings offense is clicking. Ottawa is struggling a little bit, but I think this cleaning house up front, I think there's going to be a bit of a winds of change because the players have been expecting something to happen. They knew something was going to happen up front. Maybe we didn't expect it as much in the media steal because we're not as close, obviously. But I think here this is going to be a good game for this Ottawa Senators team to snap out of it. I'm talking this one up really nicely, but hit me with the over 6.5 at -132. And my final pick, Carolina at New York. I think you know where I'm going if I'm betting a total in this one. 7 of the last 10 between these two stingy defensive clubs have gone under the number, and including actually when I looked at these last 2 games against each other, 2-1 and 3-2. Their most recent 2 games. Both teams playing pretty good. Most definitely the Rangers looking really good. This one smells like an early Eastern Conference playoff tilt preview.
Yes, it does.
So hit me with some playoff type action, which usually goes under the number. Under 5.5 if you're feeling like you need some more confidence. Boost it up to 6.5 and bring that odd down slightly and put it into a parlay.
I like all 3 of those picks. I had to stay away from the Ottawa Senators Kings matchup, though, just because of the injuries on the back end, on the blue line, as well. This again, who knows what you're going to get out of the goaltending? It could be an absolute blowout from one side, and maybe the Korpisalo or Forsberg shows up, and so does Talbot or Copley. So you never know. But I had to stay away from it. But I'm crossing my fingers that it hits for you there, baby. Those are the locks of the night. Those are the big time bets for Thursday night, big time betting board. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time is when you can find all of our episodes. And again, thank you so much for making tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code LOCKEDON. That's JamesAllen.com code LOCKEDON.